Hello, and welcome back. This is attempt 50. Not that much. But feels like that. Today we'll be reading Corrupt. It's a Chisaki X Reader fanfiction by Kikyo851. Today we'll be reading chapters 33 through 35. I've already read them all the way through before I realized it wasn't recording the last time I recorded. So I already know what's going to happen. Trust me, it's good. At least I thought it was good. And maybe this time I'll actually be able to read it, so we don't know. Right? Chapter 33. For him. You'd resolve... That's not... That is the word. That's the word. You'd resolved yourself to this fate, your future, your way of living. Everything had just been sacrificed for Chisaki. You'd done so of your own volition, and you were determined to protect him until the very end. But yours was a cruel reality. The fact of the matter remained that you were stranded in the middle of a highway, the love of your life, weak and armless and bleeding out as the seconds passed. "This is suicide, traveler," Chisaki rasped weakly, his body slanted against your own. He was still managing to support some of his own weight. Otherwise, there was no way you'd be capable of carrying him out of here. You were boxed in here with heroes and police no doubt on their way. You needed to do something, and you needed to do it fast. Inhaling sharply, you ghosted one of your hands over the fleshy stump where Chisaki's arm once stood. A soft light formed around your fingertips, and you could feel the energy slowly leaving your body. You moved your hand towards his other mutilated arm, repeating the same process for a few weeks. When you pulled your hand back, your fingers were coated in blood. "Hopefully it helps numb the pain for a bit," you mumbled, already feeling lightheaded. You barely used your power, and you were already this tired. If there was ever a time for a quirk like yours, it was now, and you weren't even strong enough to properly heal him. You wanted to cry and laminate. Never mind. I think it's laminate. Your own uselessness. But there was no time. You needed to get him out of here first. You couldn't risk overexerting yourself and being found by the authorities. Chisaki groaned softly, but otherwise said nothing. Most of the cars were smoking or had already burst into flames, but there was one that had rear-ended the curb and, other than a trashed hood, looked to be relatively functional. The policeman driving the vehicle appeared to be unconscious. At least, you hoped he was just unconscious. He was collapsed in the driver's seat, a big gash streaking blood down his temple. You felt bad for leaving him here, especially if he needed urgent care. But it was time to put your own safety first for once. "Get in, Chisaki-kun. Lie down in the back seat." He complied as quickly as he could. You managed to pull the injured policeman out of the car, then take a seat inside. The engine stalled the first few times you tried to get it back in gear, but thankfully you were in the clear before long. The good thing about driving a police car was that you could speed and zip through traffic to your heart's content, but you couldn't get too far with this thing. They'd track you down in no time. You just needed to get off the highway. After that, you would have to cover ground on foot. It felt like you'd been on the road for an eternity, but really, it couldn't have been much more than a few minutes. Well, hold on. Every now and then, you'd call out to Chisaki to make sure he was even still conscious. He responded with a series of groans and labored breaths. You didn't know how much time you had to get him to safety before he risked bleeding to death. At best, you could only heal him for brief intervals, a select few times before passing out from overuse of your quirk. "We need to hide somewhere. I can heal him better then." But where? You honestly had no idea. All you could do was focus on the present. Thinking too far ahead would overwhelm you, and quite frankly, you were barely able to retain your sanity as it was. It would be okay, just one step at a time. One way or another, you managed to get off the highway. Now that you were on the streets, it was time to ditch the vehicle and take to the city. You were still a good way from your apartment, and bringing Chisaki back there was out of the question. The heroes knew what you looked like, and they knew your first name as well. It wouldn't take long for them to piece together who you were. And then it was only a matter of time before they tracked you down and tracked down your address as well. Chisaki-kun, you breathed out, parking the car on the street. We need to get out. We're walking from here. Okay. He barely managed to grit out the word. You stepped out of the car, opening the back door and helping him rise to his feet. You tried to pull down the sleeves of his jacket far enough so that it would cover his bloody arms. You put his hood on. The fluffy, feathery design helped mask a good deal of his face. Chisaki looked at you through heavy lids. Where are we going? I honestly don't know, you admitted. You knew that was probably the last thing he wanted to hear, but you had no intention of lying to him. I don't know. We'll find something, I promise. Once again, he made no attempt at protesting. Perhaps he was simply too weak to do so. Or perhaps his silent obedience was his way of admitting that he trusted you. His life was very literally in your hands now, and you would sooner die than abandon him. As was usually the case this time of day, people were flocking about in a hurry all around, which made blending in with the crowd that much easier. If you could only hop on a train, then you could at least get a bit closer to where you wanted to be. But you didn't have any fare on you, not to mention that security guards were usually posted outside the station. It was far too risky. Fuck, what do I do? What do I do? You could feel yourself losing control over your breathing. Your chest was tight, and each inhale felt like you were being stabbed in the lungs. What were you doing? Chisaki was relying on you. You couldn't be so quick to get overwhelmed. You needed to calm down. Take a good look at your surroundings. Make the best of your resources. There had to be something here that would help you. A payphone. There was a payphone station on the corner of the next block. You told yourself you couldn't get others involved in your selfishness, but this was your best chance to make it out of here. The police wouldn't be able to track your call from here. You had to at least try. Chisaki groaned as you helped shoulder him along. You didn't have any coins with which to make the call. You pulled Chisaki's hood further down and mustered up your best smile. Businessmen were weak to a young woman's charm, and he gave you all the small change you needed. It didn't look as if he'd even given a second glance towards Chisaki, and you just hoped that he'd been in enough of a hurry that he wouldn't remember this small, trivial interaction. You are calling someone? Chisaki's brows jolted upwards as he watched you load the change in. Traveler, who? It's okay. Just trust me. You prayed that she would answer. If she didn't answer right now, then your sentence was as good as sealed. The caller ID would show up as unknown anyways. There was really no reason for her to answer, but still, you couldn't help but hope. Hello? Your heart nearly exploded. It was taking all of your willpower not to burst into tears right then and there. By some miracle, you managed to string together a sentence. Luna, it's me. There was a pause on the other line, followed by a gentle a gentle gasp. If she was before you right now, you imagined her warm, almond-shaped eyes widening and her tan shoulders trembling with unmatched intensity. Traveler? It's me, you repeated, cutting in before she could say anything else. Listen, I don't have a lot of time on this call, but I'm in a lot of trouble and I need your help. I can't get into the details. I know it's unfair of me to ask this of you so suddenly, but please help me. I need you to come pick me up from the address I'm about to tell you. Bring first aid and a big jacket. She didn't respond. You were worried that she'd outright refuse or call the cops herself, but you'd been blessed with the most incredible best friend you could possibly ask for. A friend whom you treasured so dearly, yet we're still choosing to endanger for Chisaki's sake. Okay, I'll come as soon as possible. You gave her the little information you could spare over the phone, then hung up right as the call was about to end. Chisaki let out another pained groan, and you helped to reposition him against your body. You couldn't afford to stay in any one place for too long. We need to keep walking, you told him. He nodded his head in silent agreement. Skin so pale it was nearly snow white. He'd already lost too much blood. You needed to get him to safety before it was too late. You knew it couldn't possibly compare to the pain that Chisaki was enduring, but it was difficult walking while shouldering some of his weight, and the nerves and exhaustion alone had you on the verge of passing out. The only thing that comforted you was looking over at his face ever so often. This man, wincing from the agony, his brows twisted together in torture, was whom you'd chosen to throw your life away for, and you were terrified. But even now, you didn't regret your decision one bit. Simply gazing at him was enough to flood your chest with warmth. That was how much you loved him. If Luna held true to her word, she would be here soon. But if she didn't come, then the two of you were goners. Either way, all you could do for now was wait. I'll protect you, Chisaki-kun. You leaned in, brushing his hood back just long enough to press a kiss to his forehead. His skin was somehow cold and on fire at the same time. He shuddered softly, and you helped him to a nearby bench so that he could sit down. You tried once again to muster up your powers, but if they were actually doing any good, you certainly couldn't tell. If nothing else, the bleeding appeared to have stopped. For now. More time passed, and you could feel your head pounding, but you couldn't afford to let your guard down. You kept your eyes on the road, on the corner you'd designated as your meeting spot. You waited and waited until your eyes fell on a familiar vehicle and that tacky, customized license plate. That's her, you breathed out, unable to keep the surprise from your voice. She came. She actually came. You didn't wait before lifting Chisaki back to his feet. Even if the bleeding had stopped, he'd already suffered so much that you wondered how he hadn't fainted from the pain. You helped guide him to the car, into the back seat. You sat on the farthest end and motioned for him to lie his head down on your lap. He collapsed without sparing another breath. The car took off the second you got in. Explain, Luna gritted out from the front. Her voice was raspy and strained. She didn't even sound like herself. You imagined she'd been sick with grief this entire time, especially considering your previous meeting. Back then, you'd really thought that would be the last time you ever saw her. Raiku was the one driving, which left Luna free to glare at you over her shoulder. You didn't even know what to say. If the three of you were ever to have a reunion, you hadn't envisioned it going like this. We're on the run, you said hoarsely. Chisaki was the head of a Yakuza group. Their headquarters were invaded earlier this morning. The heroes and police captured us, and well, we barely managed to get away, as you can see. Luna scanned the two of you down with those dark eyes of hers. Once her gaze had dropped far enough, her pupils constricted. Good Lord, she cried out. His arms. He's lost a lot of blood, you swallowed. I'm too weak to heal him with my powers. Did you bring the first aid? Yeah, I have it here. She handed you the box. There wasn't much inside, so the gauze and bandages would have to do for now. You handled Chisaki's mangled limbs with care, worried that any excess pressure would have him spewing blood again. He let out a groan as you wrapped the bandage and secured them tight. Sorry, Chisaki-kun, I'm so sorry. Your fingers were stained with dried blood. You patted his hair down and whispered lovingly. Under ordinary circumstances, you were sure he would hate to be touched when you were so filthy. Stop it. The thought made you want to cry, but the tears refused to form. You were too afraid to even cry. Luna watched you with a clenched jaw. I brought the jacket you asked for, too. She lifted up a long, beige trench coat. You wanted it for him, right? This one has long sleeves, so no one will notice his arms, even if he's walking right by them. Thank you, Luna. You felt your shoulders tremble. I can't even begin to thank you enough. There's no way I wasn't going to help. After you disappeared, I got a phone call like that out of the blue. It was fine. We don't have time to get into it now. so you can explain everything once we're home." You smiled weakly. Chisaki shifted in your lap, turning to look up at you with those beautiful golden eyes of his. He'd hurt so many people, Eri included, but you loved him despite it all. You loved him so much that the thought of living without him was no longer an option. "Well, be safe now, Chisaki-kun." You stroked his cheek and thought you saw the hints of a smile gracing his lips. Perhaps it was the fear and stress of it all, coupled with the extraordinary sense of relief. But before you realized, you were out like a light. Chapter 34. With Faith. "Traveler, we're here." Your eyes fluttered open. You were still in the car, but you must have fallen asleep. Chisaki was still sprawled across your lap, his chest rising and falling with every labored breath. Even if you'd managed to get him bandaged up, he was still far too weak. "We need to get him inside," Raikou said, his eyes flickering uncertainly across the dashboard mirror. "Try to get him dressed in that long coat so that no one sees his injuries." You nodded slowly. Getting spotted now not only meant that you and Chisaki were headed straight to prison, but now your two closest friends would be seen acting as your accomplices. It just wasn't an option. "Come on, Chisaki-kun," you nudged him gently. I need to get this coat on you. Can you sit up?" His eyelids slowly lifted. With a sharp, pained inhale and your help, he rose to a sitting position. You made quick work of removing his green, bloodied jacket and replacing it with a long trench coat. It had a hood, which you were thankful for. All bundled up like this, there was no way anyone would recognize him. "I'll hold on to his jacket," Raikou offered. "You okay helping him out of the car?" "Yes, thank you." Luna opened the door for you, and you swallowed hard before poking your head out and stealing a glance at your surroundings. It looked like the coast was clear. Luna's apartment was a good ways from the Hazakaya headquarters. Well, you suppose you should call it the former headquarters now. "Let's go, Chisaki-kun. Stay close to me." You helped him along, praying that his slow, uneven movements wouldn't draw any unnecessary attention. Raikou was still holding Chisaki's jacket, walking behind the two of you with Luna. You noticed that they were keeping a good distance in between you. Of course, even as injured and broken as he was right now, Chisaki was still a criminal. The last time he'd met your friends, he was just about ready to kill them. It made sense that they would be wary. It only took a few minutes to get to Luna's front door, but every second just carved an added layer to building anxiety. If you weren't shouldering Chisaki, you were sure you'd have collapsed the second you made it inside. "Set him down on the couch," Luna told you. You nodded fervently. Slumping down on the couch just beside him, you made it this far. You were safe now. "See," he smiled, tears pricking at the corner of your eyes. "We made it, Chisaki-kun. We're gonna be okay." He drew in a shallow breath. "Traveler, I think it's too early to start celebrating." Luna took a seat in one of the armchairs across from you. Her eyes narrowed coldly. "I love Traveler, and I've been losing my mind all this time imagining what could have possibly happened to her. Raikou forced me to keep my mouth shut. He told me that your henchmen would come after us and kill us if I went to the police, so I did my best all this time. Every evening I had nightmares about her. I didn't even know if she was still alive. Naturally, when I heard from her, I wasn't just going to let her be taken from me for good. But I want to make one thing very clear." She leaned forward, palms clasped, gripping her knuckles so tightly that they were white as bone. "I fucking hate you, Chisaki. Or whatever the hell your damn name is. I hate you for stealing Traveler from us, from her family, for endangering her with your shitty criminal lifestyle. She's a fugitive now because of you. She's risking her life because of you. And Raikou and I are putting our own lives on the line. Do you understand that? You're a fucking shithead." Chisaki didn't say anything. Whoa. Hold on. Chisaki didn't say anything, but you thought you felt him tremble in your arms. You knew what you were asking of them was unfair, but still, hadn't he already been through enough? Please, Luna, your voice came out as a whimper. I'm sorry, I know this is a huge to ask, but I didn't have any other options. It is true that Chisaki-kun came into my life in a very unconventional way. At first I was scared, but I love him. I really do. And this wasn't his idea. I had the chance to run away on my own, but I chose to save him. He didn't force me into anything, I swear. I just can't... You quivered. I can't imagine living without him anymore. Luna's cold gaze didn't waver. You know, I could kill him right now. I could call the police and say he broke into our apartment somehow and that I was scared and acted out of self-defense. I can tell the heroes he blackmailed you into helping him. You still have a chance, traveler. Your vision went white. Chisaki still felt warm in your arms. His blood was still flowing. He was still living. You didn't even want to imagine what it would feel like for him to go cold. I would never let you do that, you glowered. I would fight back. I would hurt you. Ah, I see. Luna's expression relaxed. She cast a sad smile towards Raikou. I don't know how it could be possible, but you really are crazy about this psycho. You know, a part of me is still convinced that he brainwashed you into caring for him this way, but I believe your words. I can tell that losing him isn't an option for you. It isn't. I love him more than anything. Chisaki made a soft, gasping noise. Luna stood up from the chair and shook her head. Man, you really are one hell of a piece of shit, aren't you, Chisaki? You've taken my best friend from me. You've made her throw her entire life away for you. I really wish you'd just up and die, but that would kill Traveler too. So we can't have that. I'll put some food together, Raikou suggested. You guys must be starving. He squeezed Chisaki's shoulder and mustered up a smile. Thank you guys. I'm sorry. I really don't know what to say. Luna sighed. What's done is done. I'm surprised you came to us and not your family. Though they're losing their minds over you, Traveler. Couldn't you have gone to see them at least once? I couldn't, you mumbled sadly. Especially not now. If they knew I was choosing to save Chisaki no matter how much I love him, and even if they believed that I love him, they would still turn him in. When it comes to their own kids, parents will do anything it takes to protect them. Well, you're probably right there. I'll go put on some tea and help Raikou with the food. We'll start thinking of a plan after you've eaten. Thank you, Luna. She turned to walk away, but not before scrunching her nose at Chisaki in disgust. You knew it couldn't be helped. If the roles were reversed, and she was the one begging for you to help her flee with a known criminal, you honestly wondered if you could be so supportive. Your friend's happiness or their safety. The thought alone made your stomach lurch. Your friends wanted me dead. Chisaki's voice startled you. He'd been silent for so long, only letting out soft, labored breaths. They just want to protect me, you told him, running your fingers through his hair. I know it seems as though I'm being debated to more and more people as I go along. His golden eyes skimmed the floor. First Pops, then you, now these people as well. I'm nothing more than a parasite, lurching off others. That isn't true. Being helped by others doesn't make you any lesser of a person. He let out a dry laugh. Doesn't make me any lesser of a person? You can still say that about me, even doing everything I've done? You cared so much for Eri, yet you still forgive me? You pressed your lips together. No, I don't forgive you for what you did to Eri-chan, but I still love you. Love is a complicated emotion. Before I met you, I never properly experienced it for myself, but it's the sort of thing that you can't really understand, no matter how hard you try. I know that you're complicated too, Chisaki-kun. Your past, your upbringing, the way that you are. I don't forgive you for hurting others, but I still love you. It's just the way it is. I don't deserve you, he trembled. Maybe not, but that's okay. Chisaki's head fell against your shoulder. I've done things I can't take back. Pop's too. Because of me, And now that I've lost my powers, no one will be able to put him back to normal. Pops will be okay. The heroes will take him in. They'll find someone who can heal him, and Eri-chan is still there. One day, she'll figure out how to control her powers, and she can help him. You really believe that? I do. You smiled at him, pressing a kiss to his cheek. His skin wasn't as pale anymore. He was still breathing, talking. You weren't going to lose him. Chisaki stared at you uncertainly. Eri is Pop's granddaughter. I don't think I ever told you. Oh. His daughter... What? His daughter had her child under circumstances that were less than ideal. At first, he merely asked me to look into the nature of her quirk. It wasn't until I discovered what she was truly capable of that I had the idea to start developing the drug. Naturally, Pops was opposed, and so I know, Chisaki-kun, he smiled gently. I already know. You don't have to say it. He buried his face in the crook of your neck. You had almost no strength left. But you'd manage to heal him again later if you rested up for a bit. Food was on its way too. Ah, food. When you'd been arrested, you were sure you'd never see a warm meal ever again. Hey, traveler, Raikou poked his head around from the kitchen. I forgot to give you his jacket back, but it feels like there's something in one of the inner pockets. Maybe it's useful. Huh? Oh, sure. You were certain the police had confiscated all of the drugs, which Shigaraki had taken for himself. But they must have missed something. Your chest swelled with hope. Maybe it was an extra batch of the quirk-amplifying drug. If you got your hands on it, then even a weakling like you might have a shot at healing Chisaki's arms. Raikou left to go back to the kitchen, and you fished through the inside of the bloodied jacket, finally removing a small black box. Chisaki had gone silent again for some reason. The lid of the box snapped open, and it opened in two. Your eyes widened. This is a ring, a diamond ring, gleaming even more brightly than the necklace Chisaki had given you as a first gift. In your time with him, he showered you with presents. Really, more than you could ever ask for. But he'd never given you a ring before, not to mention the way it was presented in the middle of the box. I was going to ask you to marry me, Chisaki mumbled, his voice soft and timid. Obviously, I didn't think things would turn out as they did. My plan was going to succeed, and once we found a new headquarters to settle down at, I was going to ask for your hand in marriage. You spun around, still in disbelief. It doesn't matter anymore, does it? Chisaki stared at you through hollow eyes. God damn it, cat. I no longer have anything. I don't have the power to protect you, and I can't even get down on one knee and present the ring to you. The ring was beautiful. Really, it was. It must have cost a fortune, but Chisaki was right. What did that even matter? At the end of the day, it was still just a ring, a material possession. Chisaki had already spent money on you in spades. It wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. Even if now, ironically enough, you needed money more than anything. You could still care less. It was the gesture, the idea, the fact that Chisaki had long since made up his mind that he wanted to be bound to you for life. That was what had you bursting into tears. Traveler, Chisaki's breath hitched. Please don't cry. The ring is still yours. The situation may have changed for the worse, but my feelings for you haven't. You sobbed loudly, hurrying to wipe your eyes. I don't care about the ring. You could have proposed to me with a ring made of yarn, and I still would have said yes. His eyes widened. You are going to say yes? Fuck. You drew in another sniffle, desperately trying to quell your sobs. You were thankful Luna and Raikou weren't in the room to see your ugly display of emotion. Chisaki-kun, you swallowed. You keep saying you don't have anything anymore, but you still have me. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it's not nothing. We'll find a way out of this, just like I said we would. You'll see. I'll help heal your arms back. I'm weak, and I'm sure it'll take a while, but I promise I'll do it. And then you can propose to me for real, okay? He stared at you, breathless. Then his shoulders began to shake, and you could see his expression as it began to scrunch up. It started with his chin, then his nose, his temples, his brows. All of it unraveled as Chisaki broke down into a sob of his own. You wrapped him in your arms, dampened cheeks pressed together. We heated up some leftover curry. Oh, jeez. Luna let out a sigh when she caught a glimpse of you. Can you two not be all mushy and gross in my apartment? I'm not too keen on watching my best friend make out with a criminal. You wiped at your eyes, laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. We weren't making out. Yeah, well, don't get any ideas. She sat back down in her chair and began clearing off the coffee table. Raiku's just putting the food into plates, so we got some time to pass. Let's play 20 questions or something while we wait. Nothing. You're alarmingly calm for the situation we're in. You know how I am, traveler. So, Chisaki, she addressed, her eyes passing over the dark-haired man. You ever kill someone? I'm curious as to what level of psycho we're dealing with here. You don't need to mince words for me either. I'm a real gore junkie. I love horror movies. Chisaki, for what was possibly the first time ever, looked visibly unsettled. He stared at you, helpless, almost like a child. You knew you shouldn't laugh, but you did anyways. After letting Chisaki get some well-needed rest, you helped draw him a bath and clean out his wounds. The last time the two of you had been around a bath together, it had gone far differently. You wanted to smile, but it was hard to do as you removed his bandages and he settled into the tub, red painting the water. He winced at the hot water. He winced as the hot water circled around his raw flesh. You helped slick his hair back, brows seizing together. Sorry, he mumbled. Did I make the water too hot? No, it's good. I'll be fine. You nodded and gave him a quick kiss before lathering up some soap into your hands. He couldn't clean himself anymore. He couldn't eat on his own or get dressed on his own. Fighting in his state was absolutely out of the question. He'd been so strong before. His quirk and prowess, a forced fear, a menace to those around him. Now he wouldn't even be able to use the washroom on his own. Even if you'd been dragged into the world of Yakuza and villains, you knew that Chisaki was a powerful man. If nothing else, you'd been able to take solace in his strength and know that he could protect you. But he couldn't do that anymore. You would have to take the role on for yourself. You would have to become his protector now. You finished washing him and helped him dry off. Chisaki sat down on the lid of the toilet as you wrapped a towel around his body and dropped to your knees. Your hands began to glow, and you once more moved the small flux of warmth and light around his mangled arms. It seemed to help with pain relief. Chisaki let out a soft sigh, closing his eyes and leaning his head back. Even if the healing would be a slow, torturous process, it was better than nothing. Luna's voice called out from outside the bathroom. Traveler, we've washed his clothes and laid them outside. I set out some clean ones for you too. Perfect. Thank you so much. He patted Chisaki's cheek and smiled. It feels better now that you're clean, right? He nodded slowly. He opened the bathroom door a crack and grabbed his clean clothes. Dressing Chisaki proved to be a far more difficult task than you imagined, mainly because he was a good deal taller than you, and you had to steady his weight while getting each article of clothing on. It took a little while, but eventually you finished with his shirt buttoned up and striking white tie in place. He looked every bit the calculated businessman you'd known him to be, as long as you didn't stare too long at his arms. Isn't this disgusting for you, traveler? Chisaki shook his head miserably. I'm sure it must be. I'm so disfigured and unsightly. Well, I think you're just as handsome as you always been, and this isn't going to be forever, he reminded. I'll heal you back to normal, I promise. You really are an angel. Heat rose to your cheeks in spite of all of it. Somehow, even as helpless as he was right now, he still managed to get you flustered beyond belief. Once you had fresh bandages in place, you made sure to kiss him again, this time on the bridge of his nose, and helped lift him to his feet. When you made your way back into the living room, Luna and Raikou were waiting for you. How was your bath, Mr. Former Yakuza boss? Luna snickered. Luna, please. He's suffering. Well, he deserves to suffer. Ignore her, Raikou chided. Anyways, we need to talk. Grab a seat somewhere. Once you and Chisaki were seated on the couch, he resumed. Right, so I think this is a given, but you can't stay here forever. Realistically, I don't know how much time we have, but the sooner we get you guys out, the better. If they dig into Traveler's history, soon enough they'll find out who she was friends with. Then it's only a matter of time before the police come knocking on our door and we're screwed. You nodded. Yes, I knew that. I was never planning on overstaying. That being said, Luna cut in, we still need to find a solution. Based on what you've told me about this guy and how it all went down, he's a super dangerous criminal and the heroes will want him locked up, even if the rest of his allies have been captured. They don't know what other resources he may have, so they're going to stake everything they have on his manhunt. I was thinking the safest way would be to get you guys straight out of the country. But with the state he's in, it's too risky. She gestured to his missing arms. You swallowed. So then you can heal him, Traveler. I'm sure you can, even if you think you're weak. I know you'll find a way to do it. Attempting to run away with this guy as he is right now is going to be a major handicap. No pun intended. Sorry. But anyways, she went on, Raikou and I were thinking that all you needed is a place for the time it takes you to get his arms back. A safe haven, so to speak. You guys will need the time to recover and get some documentation anyway. You frowned. That all sounds ideal. But where exactly would we stay for so long that wouldn't risk getting us caught? That's where your amazing best friend comes in, of course. Luna grinned ear to ear. I know a guy. My cousin met him a while back on one of his backpack treks, and he's helped me out a couple times before. Super kind, super reliable. He lives out of the city in the countryside. No one will see you out there. It'll give you the time you need to get your shit together before you decide where you want to go and rebuild your lives. Chisaki tensed beside you. Rebuild? Yeah, exactly, Luna glowered. This is a fresh start for you and Traveler, so you better not fuck it up. A fresh start? You wanted that more badly than anything. This kind of life wasn't for you after all, and it had been cruel enough to Chisaki. You would take anything, any opportunity. That's all we need, he breathed. Please help us start our new lives. Chapter 35. ties severed. The man's name was Imura Teru. It's probably said wrong. I probably said it wrong. Let's be honest, I said it wrong. Even Luna didn't know all that much about him, since he lived a rather secluded lifestyle by choice. But he was supposedly a kind, benevolent person. Luna had left to use a public payphone with which to call him so that it couldn't be traced on her records. You awaited her anxiously, twiddling with your thumbs, and when she finally came back with a big grin on her face, you weren't sure whether to be happy or afraid. Can we really trust him, you asked? He has nothing to gain by taking the two of you in, she shrugged. I'm telling you, he's helped me and my cousin out in the past, big time. You didn't want to be so suspicious, but given the position you were in, you just couldn't afford not to. Chisaki's very life was at stake, as was yours. Still, it wasn't as though any better offers were popping up, and Luna wouldn't place you in danger, at least not knowingly. I went and withdrew some cash from the bank as well, Luna said, digging into her purse to pull out an envelope. She smiled and placed it in your hand. It's not all that much, and you probably won't have any use for it until you need to leave the country, but it's just a little something to get you started. Teru-san will give you what he has to. You stared down at the money in your palms. It was easily more than just a little. It wasn't as though Luna and Raiku were swimming in cash. They were students with tuition and rent expenses, like you'd been until just recently. The feeling of the brittle paper in between your fingers gave even more weight to the situation. They were sacrificing their livelihood, their potential careers, their safety, just by helping you. Chisaki was a man who'd killed others before, and they were still helping you save him. Thank you so much, you sniffled, a pitiful attempt at drawing your tears back in before they could spill over. I'm so sorry, you two. I know how scary this must all be. It's really unfair of me. Don't be silly, traveler, Raiku gave you a lopsided smile. You're our best friend, and you were in a pinch. It's a given that we'd help you out. Luna grinned. What he said, babe. You really had the best friends in the whole world. Your parents were kind, loving people too. It hurt your heart knowing that you were choosing to leave all of that behind. We'll leave in a few hours at night. There'll be fewer people on the road, and less chances of being spotted that way. Beside you, Chisaki shifted. You could tell that he still had his share of misgivings about the whole situation. But he didn't try to protest. You caressed his cheek and mustered up a smile. A sheen passed through his eyes, and he silently nodded his head. He was choosing to trust in you. The remainder of your stay was spent preparing for the trip. It would take a good few hours on the road to get to the countryside, and you'd arrive sometime early morning. You didn't really have any belongings to speak of, save for your bloodied attire that had now been washed and dried. Luna gave you a duffel bag with some basic provisions, such as clothes, first aid, snacks for the road, and safely pocketed the money she'd withdrawn for you. The most valuable object between yourself and Chisaki was easily the engagement ring. His green jacket had also been washed, and you helped dress him in it, tucking the ring back in its respective box and zipping it in his inner pocket. For later, you smiled, caressing his face. There wasn't really much you could prepare for. All you could do was wait for the sun to set, for the coveted blanket of the night sky. Your nerves were only building by the second. Even if you'd known it was going to be an incredibly short stay, you still felt safe inside Luna's home. The second you stepped outside, you'd become a target once more. You focused on using your quirk in short bursts to continue healing Chisaki's arms, while you were still safe to do so. Finally, it was time. Raikou threw the duffel bag over his shoulder. Dress him in the long coat for the walk to the car, just to be safe. You nodded, helping Chisaki to his feet and pulling the fabric over his limbs. Luna stopped to peer through the blinds before unlocking the door. She gave you a small thumbs up. The coast looks clear. Let's go quickly. You inhaled sharply, inhaling a big gulp of cold air that burned your lungs from the inside. It really was dark. There was no reason for police to be patrolling a residential area like this right now anyways. You would be fine. Still, you couldn't help but be afraid. Every moment you spent outside had your shoulders shaking and your knees threatening to buckle. You felt vulnerable and exposed. It was a miracle you had even managed to get to the car without passing out from the fright. Easy does it, babe. She strapped in her seatbelt and glanced over her shoulder with a shaky smile. We'll be fine, you'll see. Just trust in us, okay? You shifted in your seat, swallowing hard. Chisaki's head fell against your shoulder. He mumbled something under his breath, but you couldn't quite make it out. Then you were off. You dozed off a few times. By the time you glanced out the window, the scenery had changed. The narrow concrete roads were now bordered and uneven. The cluster of tall buildings were all but out of sight. It was still dark out, but you could see the large tufts of foliage and greenery. Long, straight roads gave way to plentiful fields. Wow, you mumbled. Chisaki stirred beside you. Oh, sorry. You helped adjust him back against your shoulder. I didn't mean to wake you. I'm alright. Why do you look so surprised? I was just thinking it'd been quite a while since I'd been to the countryside, he smiled. The last time was probably for a trip I took back in middle school, so quite some time ago. We've still got a little way to go, Raikou yawned from the driver's seat, but it should start getting lighter out soon. The situation was far from ideal, but there was a point in your chest throbbing with something akin to excitement. It really was so far from the future you'd envisioned for yourself, but you knew that if you were with Chisaki, you could be happy. That was all that mattered to you, and right now, the two of you were about to start a new life, together. You can go back to sleep, Chisaki-kun. I'll wake you up when we get there. He slowly shook his head. No, it's fine. I'll stay awake. Oh, okay. Then I will too, he smiled and squeezed him closer, kissing the crown of his head. All of the color had returned to his expression, even if you knew it wasn't the case. He looked every bit the handsome, authoritative man you met that very first night. The drive went on, and before long the sun was peeking out over the horizon, warm rays of sunlight cascading over the grassy fields. It was a beautiful sight. You rolled down your window a crack and marveled at just how fresh the air was out here. It tasted plentiful and rich, a hopeful feeling. He prodded Chisaki on the shoulder so that he could get a better look for himself. Isn't it pretty? He beamed. Everything out here looks so bright. You'd half expected him to turn up his nose. After all, the countryside was hardly the pinnacle of cleanliness. The headquarters had been nearly all white, laden with the smell of chemicals and cleaning supplies. Everything was wiped and polished so fervently that it almost sparkled. For someone like Chisaki, this was possibly one of the dirtiest places he could imagine being. Yet his expression didn't convey that at all. His golden eyes shone with the early rays of sun, brighter and whiter than you'd ever seen them. Yes, he mumbled. It is rather beautiful. Everything looks so pure. Well, that's the countryside for you, Luna chuckled. She dug into the duffel bag and threw some snacks your way. Eat something and hydrate. We'll be there before long. You unwrapped your food and helped Chisaki to some biscuits. Your heart was growing warmer by the second. Somehow, being here just felt right. There was light everywhere you looked. As long as Chisaki was by your side, you could honestly say you wouldn't mind building a life here. Such were the thoughts running through your mind as you basked in the warmth and the sweet tasting air that lapped at your skin. Alright guys, this should be it. Raikou let out a wary exhale and brought the car to a stop. Luna gave him a quick peck on the cheek before he took another swig from his coffee mug. You'd probably gone another hour and a half on the road, and now you were stopped on a hill in front of a large farmhouse complex with several cottages surrounding it. You'd been driving through a village just earlier, but it looked like this man really did live apart from everyone else. Phew, I'm beat, Luna sighed, opening her car door and stepping out, dust scattering at her feet, drifting with the breeze, and forming a small cloud. You followed and turned, stepping out of the car first and then helping Chisaki to his feet. You took a deep breath, sighing contently. The air really did taste sweet. It was just a striking difference from the city. He should be expecting us now, Luna said, wiping the sweat off her brow. I gave him an estimate of when we'd be arriving. He laced an arm around Chisaki's torso. How are you feeling? Okay? I think I'm fine. I'm not in pain anymore. I can probably walk on my own. You smiled encouragingly, slowly pulling your arms off him so that he could walk on his own. Still, you made sure to keep close to his side so that he wouldn't trip or fall over. Raikou pulled the duffel bag from the car and began marching up the hill. Come on, let's get you guys acquainted. He followed behind him and watched as Luna rang the buzzer. All at once, your nerves came flooding back. What if this guy couldn't be trusted after all? What if he was only agreeing to this so that he could turn you into the police himself and rack up a reward? Considering the humble state he lived in, you wouldn't be surprised if he was just in it for the money. You nibbled on your bottom lip, shaking your head in frustration. It's too late for that. What's the point in doubting him now? Whatever happens, I'll protect Chisaki-kun. Your heart was beating wildly in your ribcage, with no signs of stopping. Finally, the front gate began to open, and your pulse stilled. Oh, I'm glad you found your way here all right. A tall, middle-aged man with a soft demeanor and a warm smile poked his head out the gate. His thin black hair was combed backwards and balding just slightly. He had a strong jaw and defined build, probably from years of working his fields. His eyes were a dark, warm brown. Upon seeing him for the first time, you immediately got the strange sense of déjà vu. Huh? He kind of looks like Pops. Chisaki had gone stiff just beside you, and you could tell he thought so too. The resemblance was almost uncanny. Welcome, everyone. Teru smiled and bowed his head. I hope the trip wasn't too tiring. Thank you for coming out all this way. He was thanking you? He was actually thanking you, even though he was the one who agreed to take in 2 fugitives. Thanks for having us, Teru-san, Luna greeted him in a friendly hug. You've really saved our asses, you know that? It's the least I can do, considering he drifted off at the end, turning towards you and Chisaki. His brown eyes skimmed the latter's frame, and he nodded his head knowingly. I see. You've got yourselves wrapped up in some nasty business, it appears. Thank you so much for agreeing to take us in, you blurted out. If you hadn't, I don't know what would have happened to us. Teru smiled again, reaching out to take your hand. You must be Traveler. Luna always spoke so fondly of you. Really, there's no need to thank me. I'm happy to be of help. You cast your head down, ashamed of having suspected this man of something devious and sinister. It wasn't even an act. You could see the kindness in his eyes. It was there, plain as day. And you must be Chisaki, he addressed, shifting his gaze toward the man beside you. Chisaki tensed up for a moment, and Teru smiled sadly. From what I've heard, you're not too keen on others touching you. Besides your partner, I will of course be mindful of that during your stay here. If you don't mind me offering, would you like to take a look at your rooms? It's quite ironic, since I don't often have visitors, but I have several guest rooms for you to choose from. Chisaki hesitated for a moment, his Adam's apple catching in his throat. His golden eyes flickered over towards you for guidance. You merely smiled and nodded your head. All right, he breathed. Yes, thank you. Please, show me to the rooms. Teru gestured for Chisaki to follow him, and the two disappeared inside the house. You were the one who made the decision to bring him here, and he was trusting in that decision. Trusting in you meant trusting in Teru too. He really is a good guy, Luna reassured. He has some complicated circumstances, which I'm not entirely familiar with myself, but I know that he wants to help people every chance he gets. He smiled. I know, I can tell. I trust you, Luna. Good, I'm glad. She shifted awkwardly on one foot, her smile dropping. You know, traveler, it'll be hard for us to come out here. Obviously, we would really like to, but it's a long trip, and especially if the police start keeping tabs on us and following us. I know, Luna. You don't have to say it. Tears began to well up in her eyes. I mean, it's not like we'll never see each other again, right? Once you're out of the country, there's nothing they can do anymore. She's right, Raikou tried. It's only a matter of time before this all calms down. This country's got enough villains to deal with as it is. They've already got enough on their plates. You urged yourself to smile. Yeah, that's true, but I think this is goodbye for now. Traveler, I don't want to risk getting any of you guys caught. I'm not sure how long they'll keep searching for Chisaki-kun, but as Raikou said, we can't do much until it all calms down. It might end up taking a little while, but we love each other, right? That's why I know this isn't goodbye forever. It just can't be. You promised yourself you wouldn't cry, but it was impossible after all. You fell into Luna and Raikou's arms, thankful that Chisaki wasn't around so that you could sob as loudly as you wanted to. It wasn't goodbye forever. You knew it wasn't, but this chapter of your life was really coming to a close. Don't regret it, Luna sniffled. Don't you dare regret choosing him. Not even for a second. If you do, then I promise I'll find you, fly over to wherever you're living, and kick your ass. You laughed through your tears. Okay, that's fair. Tell that asshole to make you the happiest girl in the world. I'll haunt him if he doesn't. Okay, Luna, I'll tell him. Raikou mused your hair. You've really grown up, huh, traveler? I don't know if I'd have it in me to sacrifice everything for someone else's sake. If Luna went to jail, I'd probably be the one who turned her in the first place. Huh? Kidding, I'm just kidding. God, what the mask up. Warm tears slipped down your cheeks. Luna gave you one last kiss to your nose. Raikou kissed to the top of your head. You felt their loving embrace growing farther and farther away. You knew the longer they stayed, the harder it would be for them to leave, but you didn't let them out of your sight for even a second, watching as their red, tear-streaked faces made their way down the hill and stepped into the car. You waved your hand, all the while breath shuddering, realizing that the last of your ties to this life had just been severed. Goodbye. Ow. Everything hurts. No, I'll be fine. She's a good author. I really like her stuff. I've read a couple other of her stories. Ow. My arm's gone numb. You should check her out. We're on Kikyo851.com. I don't think it's an app. I don't know. I haven't found it as an app. Maybe it's an app. I could be wrong. Check her out. Okay, this has lasted at least an hour. Maybe a little more. So I think I'm going to end it here. Oh, hey, see? Just an hour. And like 20, 40 something seconds. Alright, I'm going to end it here before it gets too long. She explained that it's got like 2 more chapters or something like that. So I will see you in the final reading of this story. And goodbye.